joining us for this latest installment of the virtual Ojai Talks. My name is Fiona Digney and I am the producer and the artistic administrator for the Ojai Music Festival. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be chatting with two of this year's festival artists, harpist Emily Levin and composer Dylan Mattingly. Emily is the principal harpist for the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, as well as being a guest harpist with the LA Phil, the Houston Symphony, and has regular appearances with the New York Philharmonic. Outside of her orchestral harp stardom, Emily has also won many international harp competitions and released a solo album called Something Borrowed, and has a wonderful duo with the guitarist Colin Davin. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you for having me.
Our other guest today is one of our featured composers for the festival this year, who, aside from being a sought-after composer, is also the cellist for, co-founder, executive, and co-artistic director of New York's exciting and adventurous new music group, Contemporaneous. Originally from California, Dylan is now based in New York and has an impressive list of artists and ensembles who champion his work, including the Cabrillo Festival, the Capo Chamber Players, pianist Sarah Cahill, our 2021 festival music director John Adams, and of course the Los Angeles Philharmonic, among many others. Welcome, Dylan.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So today I'm delighted to be able to talk to you both about two pieces. The first is La Vita Nuova and Other Consequences of Spring, which is a harp and guitar duet that you, Emily, commissioned Dylan for and premiered back in 2017. And the other piece that we're going to talk about a little bit later is the fantastic co-commission between the Los Angeles Philharmonic and the Ojai Music Festival for a quartet from Dylan for two harps and two detuned pianos called Sunt Lacrimae Rerum. These are the tears of things. But before we get on to that amazing premiere that will happen in September, I'd love to dive into this harp and guitar duet, La Vita Nuova, which I pretty much have on repeat all the time now. So before we get into that, I'd love for you guys to maybe give our audiences a little bit of a background into how you two met, how you began working together.
Sure. I mean, we know each other through that piece, La Vita Nuova. I know Colin really well, the other member of the guitar and harp duo, and Colin's actually a member of Contemporaneous back in New York. And Colin wrote to me at some point and said he wanted me to write a new piece, and he gave me a couple choices of like various things that he was doing, one of which was the duet with Emily. And immediately, I'm someone who I love the sounds of little, things that sound like this, and I was really excited about the idea of writing for harp and guitar, and so that's how I came to know Emily, and just get to experience her and Colin play my music, which is a wonderful experience, and I'm really excited for Emily to play the new piece in September.
Emily, can you tell us a little bit about the piece from your perspective? For people who haven't heard it, it's just gorgeous and transcendent and angelic, and the combination of harp and guitar is just beautiful. But can you tell us a little bit about the piece?
I will say, I feel like Dylan chose the two hardest instruments to write for together. They're both pretty enigmatic, and there are many intricacies that you only really find out when you play them. So bravo to you. My mom actually likes harp and guitar together more than solo harp, which is saying something. It's this combination of, the pointedness of the guitar and then the resonance of the harp. It creates this pretty stunning sound world. But this piece, it's about 20 minutes long. It's in three main sections. And Dylan, you probably have not heard me describe it this way, but it's how I tell our audience before we play it. I feel like this piece is a bit like going to a museum and sitting in front of a painting and just sitting there. And, when you first look at it, you notice the things on the surface. And then as you sit there and sort of spend time with it, you start to notice all of these intricacies and how things deviate slightly when there are small variations in the color and the texture. And that's how this piece is. It's very repetitive on the surface, but as you go through these iterations of a theme over and over, they change slightly. And the longer you sit there with it, the more you start to notice the details. It's almost, it can be a very meditative experience. especially if in the right kind of hall. So then, and that's how we feel even when we're playing it. It's a very, you can really get into the groove of it.
That's wonderful. I like that description a lot.
Yeah, I find a lot of your music creates this beautiful ephemeral space, like this four-dimensional space for the audience and the musicians to kind of be within and explore from the inside, which is really, really stunning and beautiful. And I think it's very much along the lines of what you were talking about, Emily. Dylan, could you give us a little bit of background into what inspired, you had the instrumentation given to you, harp and guitar. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, the piece is called La Vita Nuova and Other Consequences of Spring. It the it actually the kernel of inspiration came from walking into a used bookstore in downtown Berkeley when I had like an hour and a half to kill, and I found La Vita Nuova, the Dante, somewhere in the back, and I sat down and read the whole thing while I was waiting for whatever it was that I had to do next, and it's a beautiful book, and it's funny. It's something I always had in my mind from. I mean, I've read the Inferno, but I always had La Vita Nuova in mind from this line in "Tangled Up in Blue," the song by Bob Dylan, where he says, like, I forget the first half of that verse in this moment, but written by an Italian poet from the 13th century. There's like this little reference to the fact that someone is reading La Vita Nuova. So it's like it's always been percolating in my head, and I've always wanted to read it. And I mean, it's a beautiful book, but the thought that I had it was in the middle of the bursting of spring, and there was a sense that I had in that moment that I think I can see in other places, but like that this bursting of artistic and kind of like like this outward love from Dante is also like just something that looks the same as the flowers blooming and the leaves returning to the trees. Like there's something like, yes, this is an individual emotion that we can experience as a person. Like, I feel this, this is me, and also like it's just like it's something springing up out of the earth in a way that felt beautiful at the time. So that's where the inspiration for the piece came from.
I was just thinking, the first section is definitely the bursting. That's the loud section. Everything is mezzo forte or up. And we're both climbing up our instruments and then coming back down, then climbing up again. And you sit there for quite a while, and then you move into the middle section, which is my favorite section, and it's essentially two notes in the harp plus a few added ones, but mainly it's two notes and the rhythms change slightly. And then over this sort of stillness, Colin comes in with this very almost improvisatory melody over it. And I feel like that's more of the root side of things, descending underground. And then if you were going to watch like time lapse of like a flower growing over time, I think that would be the third section. It's very sparkly. It's at the very top of both of our instruments, extremely high. And I'm doing groups of 10 and Colin's doing groups of 7 or 8. So if you spend too much time thinking about it, it gets very complex. But once you sort of groove, then it's fine. But yes, the entire piece definitely it's infused with life all the way through. It's really fun to play.
Wonderful premiere that's coming up in September. As I mentioned, it's a co-commission between the Los Angeles Philharmonic and the Ojai Music Festival, and it's going to be premiered by Emily and also the San Diego Symphony harpist Julie Smith Phillips, who is a wonderful harpist, and our audiences may have seen her at the video in February of Julie performing a Hannah Lash excerpt from Hannah Lash Tree Suite. And then the two pianists, Vicky Ray and Joanne Pierce Martin, who I know have worked with you, Dylan, before on your piece Gravity and Grace that was premiered in 2019 at the LA Phil's Noon to Midnight. And so it feels like it is possibly a bit of a homecoming ensemble-wise for you with all these people that you've worked with before. And of course, it's a massive homecoming for our Ojai audiences to finally be able to be together again. This piece, it's 17 minutes long, 2 harps, 2 detuned pianos. Can you, Dylan, talk a little bit about how this piece came to be and what's similar, what's different, and what you're super excited about?
Yeah. So I started this piece in, it would have been, I started working on a bit in, I think, August of 2020, but really started it in September of 2020 at the kind of the absolute most apocalyptic moment of the entire pandemic, certainly in California for us in the Bay Area. I've been in the Bay Area for the, typically I split my time between the Bay Area and New York, but I've been in the Bay throughout the whole pandemic. And there was a day, September 9th, I want to say, 2020, when the sun didn't come up from the wildfire smoke across California, covering the sky at some sort of particularly high angle such that no sunlight came through that day. And there's something really viscerally terrible about the kind of the ultimate metaphorical driver of the sun coming up every day just not happening, to wake up and have it just be kind of like dark orange all day. It was awful. And I was thinking in that moment, I started writing music in that moment, but I'd been thinking for months about what's the music gonna be that we'll want to hear when we can be together and hear music again. And I think that there's some sense, I mentioned this in my program notes, but I think that there are a couple, there are an infinite number of paths of what art can be and do, but a couple things really come to mind when I'm thinking about what music to write. And in some sense, art can be autobiographical. Art can be, this is what I've experienced, and I'd like to share that with you. And in another way, art can really be aspirational. Art can be something that creates an experience that you want for people to have. And it felt to me like in that moment, and I certainly feel the same way now, that the music that I would want to hear when the pandemic was receding and we could be together again after such an experience of communal trauma was not going to be like the music of how terrible it was, because we've all lived through that, and like in some sense we don't need music to tell us how bad the last year has been, and for the really supreme tragedies, music I think can't be that. And what we really will want music to be is the world that we want to inhabit. I wanted to write music that was the world that we want to live in. I want to write the music of joy, the music of being together, of dancing, of this kind of barbaric yop that we're here. And so I started writing music on that day. I remember, I kind of wish I had taken a video. I think it was just too depressing to take a video, but I remember looking out this window right here into that dark black orange sky at noon, and just writing this extremely ecstatic music that I was hoping could just kind of fill everything. And so that's how I started this piece, and where it really comes from.
Thank you so much, Emily and Dylan, for joining us today and talking a little bit about your music. And we are so excited to have you both at the festival in September.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So fun to be here. Can't wait.